Good morning, everyone. How is it going? Greetings in the name of Jesus Christ. I take a drink of Diet Coke. Wow, the flow of inspiration yesterday was intense. Put a bunch of videos out. Um, so much stuff is going on, so many different discussions, so many issues to address. And if I'd have kept going on that track that I was going yesterday, I'd have put out at least 3 more videos. I think four more videos, because there's just so much influx of information. People are so they either want to learn, they either have a desire to understand, or they're bitter, angry, and don't care. What I know is good enough, and I don't need to know anymore. I don't need to learn anymore. Um, so many people are getting so hung up on, I have to prove to God my faith, and I don't understand where that comes from, because it's not in the Bible about proving to God you're faithful. I've covered in several videos. It's all in the heart. It's in here that shows God your faith. He knows what your driving force is. You can tell yourself your driving force is this, but He knows really what's going on in your heart. And we can't hide anything from Him. Everything we say, think, do, it's all recorded. There's a lot of really good teachers online that get into the Word and break it down and unpack everything and get all the knowledge out of there. I'm not that good. I just do it very, very academically. Or not academically, depending on how you're using that word. But there's so much information in there, but it explains such a simple process and such an easygoing process. And it's just, I can't get my brain wrapped around the concept of I have to perform all these things in order to prove to God I'm faithful to Him and I believe in Him. Um, and it's not in the Bible, these things. And so many people are taking one verse out of the Bible and building an entire doctrine and belief system based on that verse, when there's 99 plus other verses that deny what they're saying and the doctrine that they're trying to create. Can you, anyone, can you fulfill every law and every commandment that has been put out? There's 613. I actually was inspired to go and look those up. I thought, well, Lone, if you're going to talk about it, you need to know what you're talking about. So I went and I looked them up. Wow, there's no way. That's for the Jewish people, because it's stuff that they do. We can't possibly fulfill that. Now, a lot of people, and I starting to hear this, a lot of people when asked that question, well, he understands there's some of the things we can't do. Even the Jews do it in the law, in the 613 commandments. They say concerning animal sacrifices, obviously we can't do it because we don't have a temple. Well, that's incorrect. They actually could. They don't have to have a temple. All they need to have is the altar, which they have. Because in the book of Ezra, that's all they had was the altar until the temple was built. And they did their sacrifices. They performed everything. So they could fulfill those parts of the law. But even they make excuses of why they can't fulfill the law. It's all excuses so far that I'm hearing. Do you believe God? Do you trust Him? Do you have faith in Him? Do you believe Jesus Christ and that He was real and that He walked this earth and that He did what He did on the cross, and that is for your salvation? If it was all about earning our salvation and proving ourselves, Jesus didn't need to die on the cross. Plain and simple. So why did He? Well, it was because there was no way we could fulfill that law. But people don't seem to get this concept. They're denying Jesus Christ is what they're doing. And this seems to be an extremely widespread frame of mind, whether the person realizes it or not. So I'm going to put it. So I've got these 613 laws here. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through all of them. This isn't going to be a long video. There's a couple of websites that list all of them. This one's on Chabad.org. Now, the Chabad, this is the Orthodox Jew organization in Israel. They're worldwide, but they go off of and pattern their lives and work through the mitzvahs and the traditions and the 613 commandments. Now, most of this stuff we've heard in the Bible, but in the 613 commandments, it very specifically breaks down aspects of these things. So I'm going to read the foreword, and you guys can see what you can derive out of that. It was kind of telling to me. The Talmud tells us, and guys got to understand, the Talmud is a Babylonian text. Very dark stuff in there. The Talmud tells us, Tractate Makkah 23b, that there are 613 commandments, mitzvah, in the Torah. To me, the Torah should have been the authority, not the Talmud. But whatever. 248 positive commandments, do's, and 365 negative commandments, do nots. However, the Talmud does not provide us with a list of these commandments. Several great Jewish scholars have compiled a complete list of these mitzvahs. Although they all agree on the vast majority of the commandments, they do disagree concerning a number of them. The arguments are for scholastic purposes only, for they do not disagree over any actual commandment, whether it is mandatory or forbidden. They only disagree whether certain commandments are independent commandments, or perhaps they are part of another commandment and are not counted on their own. And when you go through the list, you see that. The following list follows the opinion of Maimonides as he lists them in his magnum opus, the Mishnah Torah. It must be noted that many of these commandments, such as all the commandments associated with sacrifices, are not practicable as long as there is no temple in Jerusalem. Now, I just told you guys at the beginning of the video, at the very beginning, they did their sacrifices in the tabernacle of David. That's a tent. And they could do that. They could set up that. In fact, I believe they found that cave and found the original tabernacle of David in there. And it's currently being restored. They could set that up and do it there. In the book of Ezra, all they had was the altar, and they did it on the altar. So there's no excuse for them not to fulfill that. It's excuses. But it's really interesting when you start to go through this list, and I'll link this in the description so you guys can go through it and read it on yourself. I'm not going to break the whole thing down. It's really interesting, all the different things. Now, these lists, there's two particular websites that you can look at. These two lists, even though they both say they are the list, I looked at both of them, they actually don't agree with each other. There's different wording and different stuff. But both of the lists do give you the biblical text, it's all Old Testament, that it links to, giving those things. A lot of it's in Deuteronomy, Exodus, Leviticus. So you can go and you can look that up in the Bible and see what it talks about. But it's weird how it, like the first one, to know there is a God. That's a law. That's a commandment. Not to entertain thoughts of other gods besides Him. To know that He is one. To love Him, to fear Him, to sanctify His name, not to profane His name. These are individual commandments. Not to destroy objects associated with His name, to listen to the prophet speaking in His name, not to test the prophet unduly. If y'all remember correctly, the Bible says very explicitly to test the spirits, test the prophets, test someone who comes in my name. This says not to do that. To emulate His ways, to cleave to those who know Him, to love other Jews, to love converts, not to hate fellow Jews, to reprove wrongdoers, not to embarrass others, not to oppress the weak, not to gossip about others, not to take revenge, not to bear a grudge, to learn Torah and teach it. That's a commandment. To honor those who teach and know Torah, not to inquire into idolatry, not to follow the whims of your heart or what your eyes see, not to blaspheme, not to worship idols in the manner they are worshipped, not to bow down to idols, not to make an idol for yourself. So you see how this is going. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to go to the other website, because what they do is they give you the bulk. They give it to you in chapters. So this one has a great big preface. And this guy had done his own breakdown. So the first one, the first chapter, or the first groupings of these commandments is God. The second one is Torah. The third one is signs and symbols. Fourth one is prayers and blessings. The fifth one is love and brotherhood. The the poor and unfortunate, and treatment of Gentiles, marriage, divorce, and family, forbidden sexual relations, times and seasons. The one in forbidden sexual relations, it's really ironic because they talk about not to have these certain things in Jerusalem and all, yet Tel Aviv is the homosexual capital of the world, and that's in Jerusalem, or in Israel. I'll read it in a minute. Times and seasons, dietary laws, business practices, employees, servants, and slaves, vows, oaths, and swearing, the sabbatical and jubilee years, the court and judicial procedure, injuries and damages, property and property rights, criminal laws, punishment and restitution, prophecy, idolatry, idolaters, and idolatrous practices, agriculture and animal husbandry, clothing, the firstborn, Kohanim and Levites, truma, tithes, and taxes, the temple, the sanctuary, and sacred objects, sacrifices and offerings, ritual purity and impurity, lepers and leprosy, the king, Nazarites, and wars. So this is what this guy did in this one. I'm going to link both, the one from the Kabbalah and one from this guy, so you can compare them if you want to. It's a pretty interesting study, and when you go into it and start reading into it, you're like, there's no way possible we could fulfill these laws. But people think we have to follow God's law. Well, here it is. So are you following it? Now, I've heard people say, well, if you follow the Ten Commandments, you fulfill that law. Actually not. Only a very small portion of this comes from the Ten Commandments. This was built off of all kinds of other stuff. It's all Babylonian. When you go back and look at what Moses was given from God and written down, it's not this many. It's nowhere near like this. Where was that one at? Here we go. Forbidden sexual relations. Not to indulge in familiarities. This is Commandment 82. Not to indulge in familiarities with relatives, such as kissing, embracing, winking, skipping, which may lead to incest. Not to commit incest with one's mother. Not to commit sodomy with one's father. Not to commit incest with one's father's wife. Wait till you see how really detailed this gets. Not to commit incest with one's sister. Not to commit incest with one's father's wife's daughter. Not to commit incest with one's son's daughter. Treat this and the next one as commandment. However, Rambam treats them as two. Not to commit incest with one's daughter's daughter. Not to commit incest with one's daughter. This is not explicitly in the Torah, but is inferred from other explicit commands that would include it. When you read this in your entirety on your own time, you'll see what's weird. Not to commit incest with one's fathers. Not to commit incest with one's mother's sister. Not to commit incest with one's father's brother's wife. Not to commit sodomy with one's father's brother. Not to commit incest with one's son's wife. Not to commit incest with one's brother's wife. Not to commit incest with one's wife's daughter. Not to commit incest with the daughter of one's wife's son. Not to commit incest with the daughter of one's wife's son. That's weird. Not to commit incest with the daughter of one's wife's daughter. Not to commit incest with one's wife's sister. Not to have intercourse with a woman in her menstrual period. Not to have intercourse with another man's wife. Not to commit sodomy with a male. Not to have intercourse with a beast. That a woman shall not have intercourse with the beast. Not to castrate the male of any species, neither a man nor a domestic or wild beast or a fowl. Really interesting. Now we don't go all the way up to 106. It's really interesting, but this stuff is actually taking place over there. Actually, quite badly. Where was the one that I was looking? Oh, here, forbidden sexual. Oh, I already got that. I'm trying to find the one where it talks about not doing these things, having it in Israel. It may have been in there, I just missed it. But you see how this breaks down. Weird stuff. But when you read it, it's like, okay, well, I can see we can follow those. But the further you go, the more you start to realize, wait a minute, we can't do this. That's almost impossible. You would have to pay attention to every single aspect of your life. So I'm going to link both these websites into the description. You guys can go and you can look them up and peruse them. It's really strange. But I guess most people who say we have to live under the law don't go and look this stuff up first to make sure that they know what they're referring to. It's impossible. It literally is impossible. In fact, according to the preface on the other website and even on this one, The Jews can't even follow it. So if the elect of God can't do it, what makes us think we can do it? We're not special. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to get at is it's not about the law. It never has been about the law. Well, it was, as far as it was to show them what they were doing wrong, to get them on the right track, to put them in that frame of mind of doing the right thing. But when you break it down and get into the New Testament especially, it's about faith. And if you go back even into the Old Testament before the law, it wasn't the law that made anybody, or observances of any kind that made anybody righteous in God's eyes. You can read it. In fact, I may even do a breakdown of it. That it was faith that made these men righteous. That's how they were accounted righteous. I'm going to see if I can break it down and go through there with Lot, Moses, Noah, and a couple of the others, and just look at all the different things that were in there. You just got a message to sound like. So, but anyway, I'll link these in the description. I did a lot of videos yesterday, a lot of long ones. I'm going to try to keep these a little shorter. I'll link them in there. Y'all can go and look through them. And it's really interesting to read this, and it gives you a better understanding of what we're looking at and what we're talking about here. It is, like it says, literally impossible to observe this and fulfill this properly. Because what did Jesus say? If you're going to be a doer of the law, be a doer of the whole law. Because it is by that law that you will be judged. And if one violates one aspect of the law, you violated the whole law. There's no gray area. There's no middle ground. So currently, right now, the Jewish people are violating the law because they don't do the animal sacrifices like they're supposed to, according to this. And there's and the homosexuality and the incest and stuff is going on. Tel Aviv, big time, hardcore. So if that's the case and they're not able to do it, how can we possibly do it? It's because that's not what was intended. What was intended was we would get in the mindset of how God wants us to live, what He wants us to set as guidelines for morality. And through love, we would fulfill those things. Because love doesn't, because I love you, I'm not going to do these things with you or to you. Because I love you, I'm not going to hold these over your head or debts or anything like that. When you get into it, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's really interesting. But when we take what was said, like I said, people that are teaching this stuff, they're denying Jesus Christ. When you take what was said about the law and then look at what Jesus said and compare them, absolutely the law isn't made null and void, but it is fulfilled through His act because we couldn't fulfill it. Even in the heyday of the Jewish people, they couldn't fulfill the law. So if they couldn't fulfill it, how can we do it? We can't. And God knew that. That's why Jesus did what He did. That's why He came and He died for us. That's why He provided us redemption and salvation from those things. Now, we do what we can. We do the best we can to follow the law. But as Gentiles, we can possibly do what the Jewish people are doing. Do you have a temple in your garage and you sacrifice animals there? No. It doesn't work that way. We are the temple. So you see how this stuff works. When you start to look at it and get into its finer details, you start to see how all this stuff actually plays out. And then when you go to the Bible and you read and pay attention to what was said, you get a better understanding of what was trying to be accomplished here. And it was accomplished. It was established. It all worked out exactly the way God wanted it to work out. We just have to read it, believe it, and put it into practice. Simple, easy. I love you guys. I bless you all in Jesus' name. Thank you guys for watching. I know sometimes I get off track when I'm talking. I know sometimes I get a little scatterbrained. Lots of information coming in, lots of stuff going on around the world. Got a lot of things I got to do. Didn't sleep last night. It is what it is. But I'm going to keep putting information out for you guys to lead you guys to the truth and to the details that are the truth as it's been given to me. That's because I love you guys. And I want y'all to know the truth. And that's it. That's all it is. So stay tuned. There's a couple more videos that are going to come out today. And I'm going to try to get this stuff explained and get it broken down. Because if we can break it down and look at it for what it is and look at the truth of it and then compare it to the scriptures, we can get a way better understanding of how this all plays out. And it would actually, us knowing these things, help us when we talk to those other people that are misunderstanding how this stuff is supposed to go. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.